So for the record. So today is the 14th of May, and we've got EDU105. And welcome everybody. This is, I think, our second Zoom with this subject, although before we weren't all together, if you like. And it's now, I feel as if everyone's got their feet under the table, but only just in Chris's case this afternoon. All right. Now, if I could just give you a bit of a chat for 5 minutes and share some stuff. And then I want to open it up for a discussion. So I've got, you can see my screen. I see some nods. I hope you can see my screen. Yeah. So this is 405. And as I say to Victoria, little tweaks of difference to 105, but it's practically the same. You've all got these tiles. I've opened it up with editing so that I can just scroll down, but it's the same deal. So, that's where I put all the Zoom recordings. So under video resources, which you should find as one of the tiles. So that's where they will go. So today's will go at the top of that pile. Okay, so here's your forums, which you do fortnightly. Yes, there's one going to finish on the 17th, so I'll extend that for a week out, so we don't have any dramas. Now then, this one I would like to spend a bit of time on today, because that is really, I treat this oral presentation as throw you in the deep end. This is where you really can have a little snapshot of what it is to teach, and I think it's great fun. I really look forward to that assignment, and I'll take your questions in a mo. Yeah.
I'm just looking at the journal. The first reflective journal on 105 is not actually open. I can only see a spot to put the second reflective journal, which says it's due the 17th of May.
Okay, Victoria, we will fix.
Yeah.
Panic not, that's going to be fine.
Cool.
Now for this one, literature review for the masters. For bachelors, it's called something slightly different. Remind me, Victoria, what's the name for that one?
There's reading reflections,
yeah.
and then
it's reading reflections. But basically, for the bachelor, you simply have the two papers, these two, and the knack there is to read them, and for bachelors, you simply write about those two, whereas for masters, you write about those two plus a few, maybe 3 or 4, 5 at the most, and you get a bit deeper into the whole thing of a literature review, but we'll come to that. And then the final one is where you really let your hair down. You write an argumentative essay, and it's on the same theme as this one. But today I just wanted to wander through the contents a little and highlight a few things. At this point in the game, please focus on APA 6 and make sure that that becomes your way forward. I really love the Sydney University one. I find the easiest to navigate. These guides are fine, but the Sydney Uni one is brilliant as far as I'm concerned. And so that's pretty much, please be onto that ASAP. Bloom's taxonomy is, if you find it's of interest, then please dig into the resources. Otherwise, for this subject, it's not going to be that crucial. This one, critical thinking, yeah. I commend it to you highly. Do spend a bit of time there in the lecture notes or here on the video version. This one I commend to you, the blended learning thing, because that is really relevant to what we're doing at AC. Not just in the COVID, but we do it all the time. We have a blend of intensive and online. How does all that work? How do you get your head around it? What's your relationship with your lecturers and each other? That one is going to be of relevance to you down the long track because you're all going to be on placements. So I commend that to you. This one is absolutely crucial for your oral assignment. So spend plenty of time getting your head around volume, pitch, tone, body language, and all such related issues. Here, this is a content from the old version of the subject. It may or may not have resonance with you. I don't want it to become a headache. I hope it's enlightening and encouraging and building up your confidence. That's my goal. This may or may not, again, depending on what your history is, be vital. While I just remember, don't necessarily assume for every assignment you have to write an abstract. In education, you write an abstract if you are asked to, and it's usually for the big assignments, not for the ordinary ones. But for this, one of the forums, you have to get your head into what's the difference between an introduction and an abstract, which is a really good exercise. This one's fantastic. I recommend this to you because it's all about educational type of assignments. Again, depending on your level of English, this may be more important than not. And that one day, not necessarily now, but the understanding of this one will relate to your literature review, where you're looking at the quality of research and the quality of data. So that, yeah, you will need that this term. Okay, so where are we at? Talk to me and we will go where we need to go. And unmute yourself, obviously, if you want to ask a question. Where would you like me to elaborate? What would be the most valuable, folks?
So I just wanted to ask a question about the reflective journals on the forum.
Yeah.
With the other subject, there's like something to read and then reflect on. With this one, is it just us reflecting on the question that's there? Is that right?
Yes and no. You see, number one, I would argue you're reflecting on being an undergraduate or a postgraduate. What are your goals for studying, etc.? That's incredibly personal. Yeah. With no material to read up, no. Whereas here, number two, different learning styles. So you go to the relevant window that deals with learning styles. You study up that, and this is a reflection on what you've learned there about yourself and what you will learn there about the kids you're going to be teaching. So yeah, that is related to material. Same with number three and number four. Number five is a reflection right at the end of term on the process you went through in setting up your oral presentation. So that was a great experience. I loved it because of, or I hope we never have to do that again because of. Okay.
Thank you.
So I just we just lost our internet for a few minutes, so I just missed the last couple of minutes if there was.
Yeah, I was just going through the content of the Moodle page.
Okay, great.
and reviewing what was on there.
Thank you.
In terms of, I think, where you're at, although you can please direct me, it is this. It is the, what happened there? It moved on its own. That mouse is alive. The individual oral presentation. Now, that's due at the end of May. So in a sense, that's where everything points at the moment in this subject. So talk to me. Questions?
Is there a specific topic? Is
Ah,
there like
no.
how?
No, there isn't. Oh, you masters folk, you're letting the bachelors hog all the questions, but here goes, because this is going to be relevant to you as well. Here, you know, if you signed up basically to do a major in music teaching, then I would expect you to use music. If you're a primary teacher, then you just choose from all the KLAs which one you want to have a go at. To me, the issue is going to be much more, who are you going to be in front of, and who are you going to model your oral presentation on, particularly bearing in mind the COVID situation. So to me, the challenge now is, you know, are you going to be getting your family together and simulating a class? In which case, you'll have to prep them up to be year 10s, or prep them up to be year 4, or are you going to get real year 4 or real year 10 kids? Answer me. Talk to me.
Can we just get a group of people on Zoom and record the Zoom doing the lesson online, similar to how the teachers are doing it at the moment?
Well, okay, that I would have to say yes.
Okay.
But this is my dilemma. Here we are on the 14th of May, right? This is due 31st. Now, I don't want you to have to be rushing this and doing it on the 29th of May. I would far rather you get going this weekend, for example, and get it out of the way as soon as you can. I would much rather that, and therefore, I guess, in the next few days, in the next week, you're not going to get kids back at school. You're not going to get an opportunity yourself to get in there. So unless you have a particular relationship with the school, in which case exploit it, get in there. And obviously, if you are going to be filming yourself with real children, make sure it's backs of their heads and you've got all the conditions met with missions and so on. Even if you're doing recordings online, Kate, with people on Zoom, then you've then got to make sure that you've got your permissions. And I'm really not fussed about how many, as long as it's 2 or 3. I think 1 might be a bit difficult, although I think I have seen somebody do a one-on-one. But the crucial thing is the camera's not just on your head, it's on you, so that we can see you move around, you know, in a room. We can see, you know, how you react and respond to real people.
Okay.
If you did a 10-minute monologue, I'm sorry, the pedagogy is not going to run too well. And even if you're the best orator in the world, I seriously am not going to be able to give you a very good mark if you do a 10-minute oration.
Well, it's not realistic. You never get through 10 minutes of talking in a classroom anyway.
You wouldn't. And what if you, go to the subject outline, go to the rubrics, and you'll notice where the marks are divided into how much for the oral presentation, how much for the planning. It's a very small, it's 10% of 20 in this case for the lesson plan. So although there's a ridiculous word count, don't worry about that. That is trivia. It happens to be there for accreditation purposes. The bulk of it, 60%, I believe, is for the actual presentation, but there's a big chunk for students' engagement. Now, if they're simply, for example, sitting there and giving you a one-word answer, that really doesn't count as a massively good engagement. If you manage to get somebody to come up with quite a story as an answer to one of your questions, that's brilliant. That's actually, they've got the confidence to be able to share a pretty long story. You've got the confidence to let the lesson go where you don't know where it's going, which is fantastic. The teacher will, can't help themselves. They'll want to control. But then if you over control, you don't get the participation and you don't get the engagement which you're after. Okay? So, I sometimes say, and you'll hear me say this probably ad nauseum, ideally, 70% student talk, 30% teacher talk in a given period of time. So just because you're doing a 10-minute oral presentation doesn't mean to say you have to talk for 10 minutes. If you're talking for 3, that's fine. It could be a most brilliant lesson. I don't mind telling you, one of the best lessons I saw on this subject was from a teacher in South Africa who was already teaching, and she's got to get herself accredited. And she had, I think, 3 kids in year 8, 9-ish, and they were doing a demonstration together in chemistry. And it was absolutely riveting. It was almost as if I was watching a professional video, and I couldn't believe this was, a teacher in training doing a lesson. It was absolutely riveting. The kids were all involved. They were doing stuff. They were being safe. The teacher was being safe. It was a thoroughly integrated lesson. So, so the setting is going to be the biggest challenge, I think, in this term because of COVID. And if you want to get a group of people together on the screen, let them see the whole of you. Please don't just let them see your head. Anything else on the oral? If you want to say, you've got to unmute. Yeah,
sorry,
Chris.
Sorry, I clicked the wrong button to unmute. Just to fulfil the criteria of a postgrad student speaking, I'm going to speak. But also, so for example, I've got 2 stepdaughters at home. One's in year 9, one's in year 12 at school. Both of them have religious studies as their, as core subjects for them. So I could give a lesson on the Trinity, for example, or an aspect of the Trinity, and just film me giving the lesson and their responses. Would that be about right?
I would change the word their involvement, their participation. Responses sounds a little wooden. So think of you as a group doing the Trinity.
Yeah.
What does that look like? And don't be afraid of getting it student-led. Depends. 10 minutes is really difficult. It's really, really difficult to you may end up, doing a thing for 20 minutes, but then you just chop it and take the most appropriate 10 minutes worth.
Okay.
That sort of thing.
I mean, for the Trinity, that's far too ambitious anyway. But certainly, I could. We've been arguing for the last 1,000 years about it. But certainly, I could look at the hypostatic union. So maybe just teaching one aspect of
Fair enough.
Then, so it might look a bit contrived to say, well, today we're going to look at the hypostatic union. But with that kind of
look, be totally free. I would, it's not vital for this exercise, but since you are doing studies of religion, then, and you live in New South Wales, so do dig into
The syllabus.
the NESA website, see
Yeah.
what that says, and you wouldn't reference it in what you say on do, but in your written bit for the lesson plan, you know, you'd have a reference to what bit of the syllabus you're relating it to. And the same goes for all of you in terms of what bit of a syllabus, what year level. To me, that's absolutely crucial. Never forget, okay, these are year 8, what is it? You know, year 12 or whatever it is. You've got to be clear that this is the age group or the stage you're talking about. Okay, anything else on the oral presentation?
Just one very quick question. Do you have a template for a lesson plan that
Now,
Alpha?
when you go to EdInfo,
Yeah.
don't tell me you can't because you better, otherwise I'll have a fit. Go to EdInfo.
Yeah.
On there, you'll find a few
Yeah.
templates. I'm not precious about any one of them, and I'm not precious about you using any of those. If
Okay.
you have another template that you're happy with that or your school people use, go for it. The only thing I would encourage you at this stage is that when you're writing up this little mini lesson plan, you know, you could, if you wanted to, write up a lesson plan for the whole 40 minutes or whatever. But don't spend too long on it, please, because it only gives you 10% of the marks. It really, don't fret about it at all. And then indicate what bit of that lesson you are actually going to teach. So it actually gives a bit of context for the 10-minute segment that you're going to do. I was going somewhere with that. I don't know whether I've answered my own question or not. Yes, yeah. So whatever template, then lesson plan, template you want to use, go for it. So yeah, what I was going to say was, down at some point during a good a template, I would say there should be some indication of time. So there's 2 minutes for this, there's 4 minutes for that, there's 8 minutes for that assessment or whatever, you know. So yeah.
When you said that we can choose to write the whole 40 minutes, is that required? I was going to do a music lesson for kindergarten because I on high and low notes, so that segment of a music lesson actually fits quite well into 10 minutes.
No, that's cool. Yeah, no,
So
you don't have to. I'm not saying you have to. I was just, for some people, that whole thing becomes a bit of a,
how do you do it? Yeah,
I've never done one before, but I mean, if you have and you know and you're familiar, look, don't let that stress you. That's all I'm trying to say.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Anything, and then when you come to submitting it, you cover sheet, it's a Word file. All assignments in education are Word files. You upload it in there, and you simply have a link to your YouTube or whatever system you use. Please don't upload something that I need a password for, which is really complicated, because I'm normally rushing like crazy to get this thing marked, and I don't want to have to go back and forth with you saying, I can't get at this, it's not public or something. I mean, my answer to you, if you're worried about putting something on the web, public or private, if you just put something half meaningless in the title, it can't be searched anyway, or if it is, it's to be purely random. I'm not bothered about what you call the thing as long as I've got the link. So, and then once I've marked it, you can delete it, of course. Okay. Anything else on that one? All cool? Okay. That's halfway through June. I don't particularly, we're going to have another Zoom or 3 before then. So if you've got the time, if you've got the headspace, it would be good to read these up and make some notes on these articles as you go through, because that's what your literature review or reflection is going to be. And you upload that on there. How many of you are familiar with Turnitin? I see 2 hands, I see a shake, and I see some shakes. Allow me to mention a little bit about Turnitin. You see this symbol here? That's a Turnitin assignment. The idea being, when it goes in, it gives you a reading of how much of this hasn't been referenced properly. And if the percentage is higher than, say, 15, that's beginning to get dodgy and potentially indicating plagiarism.
Can I just come in on that, Jim?
Yeah.
I mean, I've been using it for the past few years with ACU. There's a couple of limitations to that. One is obviously if something's a set test, then everybody's questions are the same, so that comes up as a high hit. Also, the percentage depends on the length of the assignment. So, for example, I had one that was a summary assignment, and because I used my name and student number as a header, it came up as 20% similar.
Of course.
So it's not foolproof.
No. And in education, we don't take a hard and fast percentage at all. When somebody hands in something like 70%, there's a problem. We have a problem, Houston, and that's not on. It can happen when people are doing units of work or lesson plans that they perfectly legitimately can get off the internet and all sorts of places. But the point is, when you do that, you've got to give a reference. You've got to say where it's come from. You can't imply you've generated it yourself. The other thing to watch is you can't, if you've submitted something yourself to this college or another university, you can't upload that either as fresh work unless it's totally reworked. Otherwise, it'll get pinged. So today, with my colleague Stephen Brinton, we were talking about a student who got, I think, 60% on one effort. Because it was their first offence, they were then given the liberty of uploading another version for a maximum of 50%. They then, sadly, did another rush job, and it ended up at 35 or something. So unfortunately, that's got to fail. So if it's around 20, we could have discussions. But the point is that it's a tool for you, and you can press the button and get the reading before you actually submit. You're supposed to be able to extract it if you've stuffed up. One of the key things to remember is if you're giving a direct quote, then it ought to be in inverted commas. And may I just give a game away? If you put the whole thing in inverted commas, apparently it solves your problem.
The problem with doing that, which I've never ever done.
But you wouldn't have tried it, would you?
No, but what then you'll actually get is you'll get like a 0%. And so that also raises red flags, because you shouldn't,
yeah.
When I've submitted other essays, you're kind of around like the 6% is a pretty standard for what you get. Like because you'll write phrases and things that are just in really common language that everyone kind of uses as you go through. So if you're getting around like the 4 to 6%, that's like you're not plagiarizing. It's just how it's registered it. So that would raise alarm bells if you get a 0.
So what I'm saying, folks, is if you're doing a direct quote, don't do that too often. I know some people have given me a paragraph yay big of full quotes. Now, perfectly legit, and it had quote marks and all that, but it's not really the done thing. If you are going to use a direct quote, then 3-4 lines max, I would say. and not too many of them. It's supposed to be your argument. You know, it's got to have your imprint on it. Anyway,
again, Jim, there's a bit of a cultural gap there for those of us that first went to university in England, because you certainly went, you know, when I went through the first time round, they preferred direct quotes. But as I have now learned by doing studies in Australia, it's much, and it might just be that that's the way education's gone over the years as well. My understanding is you prefer a kind of interpreted view, and then reference where you've based that interpreted view on at the end. Is that about right?
Yeah. While I'm on that point, though, thanks, Chris. If there is a direct quote, then obviously you give, you know, the name, Maisano and Pickering 2007, comma, page, so and so. The only time you wouldn't give the page number is if you weren't, you know, quoting, unless it's a particular point you wanted to draw your attention, the reader's attention to. But certainly, if there's a full quote, then make sure you got the page number. Okay. I've already emphasized, please get into this. That's big deal. Oh, don't use software for your referencing. I know there are some good softwares for referencing, but I find that I'd much prefer people to get used to APA 6, doing it by hand, because if they get software to do it, the software invariably makes mistakes. So I would encourage you, no.
So it's definitely APA 6 because there's a 7th edition that's been issued.
Yes, indeed.
With 6, are we?
Look, if you happen to go through EdInfo, I did a post about that probably a month ago. If you want to use 7th, you're welcome. I haven't looked at it myself yet. I suspect from semester 2 this year, we will be on 7th, but we're on 6th for now. In my head, I'm certainly not going to pull you apart for 6th or 7th. That's.
I mean, I don't know either at this time, but my other half says that 7th has made some things simpler. So
yes, I've heard that. The only there's another thing I will emphasize to you folks: people who've come from other referencing systems sometimes find it hard to get out of their head footnotes, and especially theological people are tending to think in footnotes. And there is a way, and I think there is an exception. You can have footnotes in APA 6, but seriously, please, I would urge you not to.
So you want endnotes, do you?
No.
Okay, so you want in-line, in-text references?
In-text references,
okay.
And the reference list at the end, and not a bibliography.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else, folks? Otherwise, I'll let you get to your dinner and your families. David, let me hear something from you.
I'm in awe of you.
Oh, please, no, don't try flattering.
I've got to go through. Clearly, I've got to go through APA because I can't even visualize what this looks like compared to what I'm used to. But the weekend set aside.
Well,
thanks for all of this.
Jen's willing to give us both a lesson on it, David, so if that's any help.
Well, I was going to say earlier, but I didn't want to interrupt. I may be using your stepdaughters as well for my classroom.
Right. That sounds like a plan. Look, I'm going here. This, can you see this? The Sydney one? Does that come through? I see some nods, thanks. Basically.
Oh yeah, I can see it now.
Yeah.
No, it's gone.
Is it there? Now, so it's nicely in columns. So if you've got
it was, and then it went away. I think because you're recording, it's gone back to your search engine.
Oh, I'll stop sharing and share again. Are we right now? Cool. So if you've got a book, then you simply have the surname, no initials, comma, and the year in the in-text. And you have this thing at the end, Cochrane A 2007. Notice the italics and notice the use of capital letters. There's only two, first and after the colon, all the rest are small. And then the italics finishes and you end up with the place, the state, publisher. If you're into a journal.
So I believe that in 7th you don't need to put the place anymore. I think that's the thing.
Yeah. This one, I'll just shush with this one. If it's a journal, there you got your in-text. And here, this is one thing I particularly like about the 6th, is the journal is in italics and does have its capital letters, and the volume is in italics, but the issue number isn't. So that's the bit where it becomes non-italics, and then no PP. It's simply the page like that at the end. So it's quite simple, and second and subsequent lines all indented. I sometimes feel as if I'm a bit of a Nazi, if you don't mind the expression, when it comes to APA 6, but I just want you to get it right and do it and then forget it and just keep on doing it by autopilot. It no longer becomes an issue. And you see, it's a reference list at the end, not a bibliography. And one of the things I get quirky about is where somebody has got a reference, an in-text reference like this in their text, but it never appears on the end. Or there's a name at the end which never appears in the text. Anyway, if you go through this Sydney thing, it covers more or less anything. And one of the lovely things towards the end is where you've had a conversation with somebody. And you can reference that. I can't find it quickly, but there's something for everything. And if in doubt, in fact, yeah, I've had students say, come on, I've really tried to get the referencing for this thing, and it's driving me around the bend. So just put that in the news forum and say, Jim, what are we going to do about that one? And I'll reply, all being well, and everyone will get the answer. Incidentally, let me emphasize, if you've got an academic question that is obviously going to impact your studies, then feel free to put the question in the news forum. If it's about your own personal circumstances, you send me an email. And while I'm working weirdly at the moment, emails is probably going to be preferable, whereas when I'm in the office, you can phone them my direct number that's on the email and leave a message if I'm not present in the room. Okay, I'll be done.
Jim, can I ask one practical question?
Yeah.
It's just that, so I got onto Moodle last night and I wanted to explore the library. When I went in there, it said I had to create a user. So I tried to log in with the user stuff I'd had for Moodle, but it didn't work.
Okay, let me have another go.
Maybe I'll email you about it. If
No, because this, I'm a little bit concerned. So tell me if you see Moodle come up. Are we on Moodle?
Yep.
Okay. So if I go, this is what I do. If I go to the home and I get this screen, do you get this screen? The using Moodle admin matters. Are you seeing this, folks? Yeah. Library information. Where's David gone? Oh, there he is.
I'm still here.
Yeah. So are you seeing this, David?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So you go there, welcome
Yep.
to the James Wallace Memorial Library. And my best source is always here. Now, this is all opened up for me, just like this. I hope it does.
Yeah,
for
that's
you.
what happens. And then when I click on EBSCO, it wants me to log in.
So it doesn't do this for you.
It doesn't do that for me either.
Oh boy. Well, in which case, folks,
I may be mistaken, but I think that there's some kind of, I think it's like the plagiarism quiz. You have to do a library. Is that correct, or have I got that muddled with something else?
you might be right. Chris and David, or anyone else who's impacted like this, go to the bottom right of your Moodle page and fill in the messenger, which goes straight to Moodle support.
Yeah.
There's a lovely lady. She happens to be in London, working from London. So if you do it this evening, she will get it today.
Mine's actually worked now, Jim. So I had to click on Enroll Now, and I clicked on Enroll Now, and it went to the page that you were on. I don't know whether that's the same for you, David, but
Where does it say enroll now?
well, when I went to Home and then library resources, whatever it was. So Home, and then down to library information, and when I clicked on that, and then it came up with not with that page immediately. It came with a message at the top, library, and then a blue button saying enroll now, and I clicked that and it worked. But I don't know why.
Oh, I might have the wrong settings. I'll have a look. Okay, I'll have a look.
If in doubt, go to that thing bottom right, but never use it for contacting me or lecturers. Anyway, it's been wonderful to meet you again tonight. Look after yourselves, keep warm, and we'll be in touch.
Take care.
Thank you, Jim. Good night.
Bye.